Hi, everybody. Welcome to my series on credit tips for buyers. This is Karen Highland. I'm a real estate agent in Central Maryland, along with my husband, Chris. We've been helping people buy real estate for over 21 years now. And I put together a series of videos explaining your credit score. And with me today is Blair Warner. He's going to answer some of our questions and give us some good tips about how to build a credit score that a lender is going to love. Hi, Blair. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
Well, hello. Yes, as Karen said, my name is Blair Warner. I am the founder and senior credit consultant of Upgrade My Credit. Website's the same, upgrademycredit.com. And I started 7 years ago after being in the mortgage business for a few years, helping people with just any kind of credit issues that might keep them from buying a house. And so this subject that we're going to talk about today is one of my favorite because the first-time home buyer, probably 80% of my clients are first-time home buyers, and so I'm ready. I'm anxious to jump in.
Great. And I'm sure a lot of first-time homebuyers have a lot of questions, especially today after so many changes in the real estate industry. So let's say that Joe and Susie just got married and they're sitting around in their cramped little apartment and they look at each other and say, you know what, let's buy a house. So I'm sure that happens all the time.
Yeah.
What kind of things do they need to be thinking about in advance to kind of to build that good credit score that lenders are looking for?
All right. Well, first, before I get into that, I want to tell you why I chuckled a little bit just then when you said that. I use that when I teach my Credit 101 class all the time. I use that example almost verbatim, of wake up one morning and say, let's buy a house, And but I add a little different twist is I actually say that we're not in the days that we used to be in where you could just wake up and say, let's buy a house. There has to be more forethought. Back before 2008, you could just wake up one Saturday and say, let's go look at houses and go driving around looking for sale signs and that kind of stuff. But today there has to be a lot more forethought and plan involved, and that's what we're going to talk about. So one of the things that you have to do of the many things to prepare to buy a house these days is to make sure that your credit and debt situation is in order. The standards have changed. They're still pretty strict. I mean, they've loosened up a little bit over the last 6 months, but it's still very strict guidelines, and when you get into underwriting, you never know what's going to pop up. So you want to have everything in order, and credit and debt is one of those things. So, for example, if you want to buy a house that falls under the FHA guidelines, I think in Texas it's 272,000. I don't know what it is up in Massachusetts. What is the FHA maximum up there?
Up here, it's let's see, it was for something. It just went down.
Oh, it
I,
went
I
down.
can't really quote you on that. I have to look that up. That's a
Well,
good
it's
point.
yeah, yeah, because I
Yeah.
just talked to a guy over in Florida and it's 325. Here it's 272, so it is different in different. It goes by the county, and so the first thing you have to do is you want to kind of figure out what basically what general house size you want and price range you want to get into, and if you are going to go FHA rather than conventional, then they require at least a 640 credit score. So the first thing you want to do if you are this hypothetical couple that decides they want to buy a house is to check their credit. And they don't have to necessarily go to a mortgage person right off. They can check it themselves online and at least get an idea if they're like 680 and 700, which means they're no problem at all, or if they're a little bit below 620, 580, 605. I mean, you got to kind of figure out where you are, and then that will determine your game plan from that point on. So the first thing you do is to get your credit checked for both of you, because these days it seems like both in a husband and wife situation that there's one's the borrower and one's the co-borrower, and contrary to what a lot of people believe, they both have to qualify, to do that.
Right. Right.
Do you have before I go on, do you have any other questions or comments?
Well, yeah, you've mentioned once before that when a buyer is getting ready to buy a house, it's a really good idea to make sure that your credit score is not right at the minimum, right? So
Right.
minimum 640, have a little buffer room, 650, 660. And so explain, I guess, what you meant by that, the reason to do that.
That's right. That's right. I remember that conversation about that. If someone had pulled their credit and they found out they just had a 642, okay, I still wouldn't advise for them to just run off to a mortgage person, get their pre-approval, and start looking for houses. I think it's better if they have that cushion, like 650, 660, 680. So, and I'm going to tell you why, that was your question. If you get a pre-approval at, say, a 642, and then they come to you, Karen, and y'all show them houses, and they find their dream home, they put a contract in, and now the mortgage lender is sending the whole package, loan package, to underwriting. And in the meantime, from the time you got that pre-approval to the time that it goes into underwriting, they're probably going to pull your credit again. And in that meantime, if you went down just from a 642 to a 639, just 3 points, that could completely kick out the loan. Now, it doesn't mean it's dead. That's being only 3 points. There might be some time to make some adaptions and save the day, but you don't want to run into that if you can help it. So the best thing to do is have some cushion there, because the score can go up. You can not even do anything to cause it. FICO is not an exact math. There's a little bit of wiggle room in there, and I don't know why they can't make it so more exact, but there is. But you don't know what could cause it, and it can go up 2, 3, 4, 5 points without you doing anything.
Great, good.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's good advice. Very good advice. I mean, as a realtor, we've run into those situations. Their credit score goes down 5 points. Boom. Oh, then everybody's scrambling in the 11th hour. I also had another question about the different types of credit you can get. I know there's revolving credit. There's the deeper credit of a mortgage, which of course they're not going to have yet, but car loans. What's the best? If not the best, what are some good tips as to what kind of credit a person needs to get to build a good credit score?
Well, and that's a good question because the three different scenarios we just talked about, either barely at 640 or way above 640 or below 640. If you do pull your credit when you're planning to buy a house and you find out that you're below 640, let's say you have a 620 or you're 592, and you need to build your credit up. There's no sense going to a mortgage person or a realtor if you pull your score and you got a 592. There's things that I can tell you to do that will build it up before you even go and take the time of a mortgage person and a realtor. And so let's say you're at a 592 and you want to start building up your credit so you can get above that 640. It's going to be too late for you to go get any kind of installment loan. Installment loan takes a lot of time for it to help you. An installment loan would be like a car loan, or if you go to Conn's and get, say, a refrigerator on an installment. Those kind of things are installment where there's a fixed rate, fixed amount of payment, and fixed time. And when it's paid off, it's gone. It's over with. That's not the best way to build up your credit. Now that doesn't mean don't be afraid to get installment loans, but not if you're in this house buying mode and you want to build up your credit pretty quickly. The best way to build up your credit is to make sure you have enough revolving credit, like credit cards, Visa card, MasterCard. And if you don't have those, a mortgage lender is going to want 2, 3, 4 trade lines anyway. The underwriter is going to actually want the presence of those trade lines on the credit report anyway. So the best thing to do is get a couple extra revolving credit, use it for a tank of gas or groceries, and pay it off every month. And in 4 to 6 months, you can see someone's score go up 20 to 40 points just from adding some revolving credit on there.
Yeah, that's really good. That's a little bit counterintuitive to what a lot of people think. They're like, no, I just don't want to have credit cards. I don't want to, get into debt or whatever. But you can't. I think I've heard you say it before. You can't build credit without credit.
Unfortunately, yeah. And if the only thing you ever want to really do on credit is buy a house, you still got to do all this little stuff first before you were able to qualify for a mortgage.
Yeah. So let's say it's down the road, you've just graduated from college, you're not interested in buying a house, but you do need to start thinking about different ways to build your credit. what are some of the kind of things you can do that maybe in a couple years will look really good?
Well, right. You mentioned a good point. A couple years. I mean, if you have time, then it's not. It's a little bit different. You can do things that take slower. You can get a bigger mix of credit. So let's say that you do have 2, 3, 4 years before you even think about buying a house. You still want to plan. There's nothing wrong. You can't start planning too early. So it is okay to go ahead and maybe get an installment loan. Get your furniture on credit. Just pay it off quickly. You don't drag it out. That's the only thing, because then you're paying all this extra interest. But you can get a car or something like that on credit, and those installment loans will help you if you have that couple years for it to really build up. You still want to get credit cards. You still want to make sure that you have at least 2 open credit cards that you're using consistently and making the payments on time for that 2 or 3 years. Another thing to do if you really don't have any credit and you're really just kind of starting at the beginning is to get what I call a CD loan. You get some money, maybe $1,000, you put it into the bank and get a CD with it. They open up a CD, stands for certificate of deposit. And then you go over to the loan department of the same bank and say you want to open up a $1,000 loan secured by this CD. And they don't care what your credit is. They may do a credit check, but they really don't care what your credit is because it's secured by a CD in their bank. So you get a loan equal to the amount of the CD. Then you take the proceeds of that loan and put it in an account and do automatic draft to pay back that loan. And let's say you do 12 payments. 12 months later, the loan's paid off, and you still have the CD, and all you've paid is 2% interest above whatever the CD rate was. So whatever the CD is paying, you pay 2% above. That's a really good way to build credit. Yeah.
That's great. I don't think I've ever heard of that. Now,
Yeah.
I'm a mom, and I've got some starter adult kids, and I'm thinking, what a great graduation gift, or instead of buying them a new set of luggage, or I don't know, whatever. Open up one of those accounts for them. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, open up our grandkids. I'm getting now to the age where grandkids are on the horizon, not yet, but I'm starting thinking, well, how can I help or bless, my grandkids, and something like that. I mean, you can start building up a kid's with a CD loan, even if they're just like 16 years old. So by the time they're 18, they're not starting at zero.
Oh, I didn't know that. So you could do that even before they're...
You just co-sign. You have to co-sign.
Right.
But you still go in there and use the whole CD loan concept, and then you co-sign, and they're building up credit.
Fantastic idea. I like that. I just like that idea. Of course, when I was young, I didn't know anything about credit. Whatever, credit cards, yeah, bring them on. But now I'm a little older, and I've paid, some interest over the years. I kind of like that. That's really a good idea. So any other last tips for first-time buyers?
Yeah, I guess what we've covered what happens if you want to buy a house and you pull your credit and you find you're hovering around 640. We've talked about if you're below that and you need to build up, what to do. But what should people do if they pull their credit and they got excellent credit? They got 700 credit scores. Do they go out tomorrow and talk to a realtor and a mortgage person and start buying the house? They can if they're really that ready. But what they're still going to have to be 2 things they're going to have to be careful about and look at, because everything's not about credit score. They have to also worry about how much debt they have and their debt to income ratio. So you could have 750 credit score and pay all your debt on time, but have too much debt, and you won't get a mortgage loan because you're above, what is it, 42% right now, I think, for the debt to income ratio.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So part of it is more than just looking at your credit score, making sure it's high enough. You can run a quick debt to income ratio. Just take all the debt that shows up on your credit report. You don't have to put all the little things. Only what shows up on your credit report is all the underwriter's going to care about. Add up all your debt, your monthly payments, and then go ahead and divide that by how much you make each month, and that'll show your debt to income ratio. Okay, and if it's above 42%, then there might be some adjustments they need to make there. Let's say, though, that you find out that you have great credit and your debt is low, 20–30% DTI. Then the last thing that you need to be careful about is don't do anything new on credit after you started talking to a realtor and a mortgage person. Don't apply for any more credit. Don't overuse it. You can still use it for gas and stuff and pay it off, but don't do anything new on credit, because you just don't want to change anything from how it looks. Yeah.
Don't buy the new car.
No. Or if you find your dream home, don't go out and buy that new bedroom set, because you're anxious. Yeah. So.
Right. Do that the day after settlement.
That's right. You can do it the day after. That's right.
That's fine. All right. Well, great. Thank you so much, Blair. I hope that our first-time buyers find this really helpful. I do. And if you want to contact Blair about any of his services, that website will be underneath the video or on the blog where you might have found this video. And it's www.upgrademycredit.com.
That's right. And I love phone calls. Feel free to call me at 817-886-0302. And my personal extension is number 3.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Blair. We'll talk to you again.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.